Domino Thinking presents Natural Born Speakers with your host, Allison Donaghy. If you were born to talk and want to know how to build your career around it, then Natural Born Speakers is the show for you. Now grab your seat because this is the place to be. Now here is your host, Allison.
Hi, and thanks for joining us this fabulous Thursday, taking time out of your day to hang out with us. Really appreciate it. And you are not going to be disappointed because today my guest is Hugh Culver. And if you want to know anything speaking, Hugh is your guy. And he's had such a really, really interesting life, and I can't wait to talk more about that with him. But his business enterprises have included creating the world's most exclusive adventure tours. And I am such a travel girl and love adventure, so I totally want to know more about that. Operating a private airline in South Chile, pioneering echo whale watching, and teaching as a university professor. So it sounds like he's kind of done it all, and he's done it from the Arctic to the Antarctic, from mountain peaks to whitewater rapids. Ooh, yikes, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, too. And even included golfing in the North Pole. Like, did you even know there was such a thing? He is the author of Give Me a Break, The Art of Making Time Work for You, and his insights and writings on personal leadership are sought after by leading organizations including Imperial Oil, Shoppers Drug Mart, Royal Bank, Investors Group, Western Union, and the list just keeps going on. So welcome, Hugh.
Hey, thanks, Allison. I'm excited about being here.
Yeah, I just think I want to talk about your life. I'm not even sure I want to talk about speaking.
Right.
It sounds like you have that life that people, watch on TV, but don't really know anybody who's had that kind of life.
Well, I was really lucky as a young guy to have a brother that led me into the adventure travel industry. And then one thing led to another. And pretty soon I was an entrepreneur and, learning all about hiring and building a team and all the things that go along with, especially building an international company, which was a huge leap from where we started in Western Canada.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about that. Like, how did you go from wherever you were, what did that look like, to where you are now? And how did that happen?
Right. So imagine back in the 70s, that was the beginning of adventure travel in North America. And in Western Canada in particular, it was really the beginning of whitewater rafting. And so after about 13 years, my brother and I had built up a pretty sizable business. It was the largest in Western Canada, and it was an eco whale watching sailing operation, which had the largest sailing tour company in Western Canada and the largest rafting company. So then, for various reasons, we sold the rafting company, and I joined up with 3 partners, and we started to build the first flights to the South Pole. And it was a natural transition because I was looking for something bigger, and I, was also looking to find something that had less competition at that time. And so nobody was going to Antarctica. And so we built up Adventure Network International, and Adventure Network is still operating. It's still the only company in the world that flies people to the South Pole, but also flies in mountain climbers. And so that was a 3-year journey of financing and buying airplanes and dealing with the military air force in Chile and just sort of a crazy whirlwind business, which took me all over the world. And so that was a great adventure.
So let me interrupt you here because I have a question. How do you go from buying a raft to take people down a river to buying planes? How do you make that leap in your head?
Well, I'm sure I did everything wrong, but it's a great question. And not only buying rafts, we used to make our rafts. We were so cheap, we actually spent the winters making rafts out of World War II surplus tubes that were used to build what are called Bailey bridges or temporary bridges in World War II. So we were extremely frugal. And now I was running around, buying $500,000 airplanes and hiring pilots who were getting paid, a king's ransom to be our pilots in Antarctica, and hiring radio operators and employing medical officers and building a camp. And the reality is that at the time, everything always seems normal. So at the time, it just seemed like the necessary thing to do. So we figured out the logistics, and we realized that we could lease a couple of the airplanes that we needed, but we needed other airplanes, and it looked like it was just economically made more sense to buy them. So we figured out, okay, how do you buy them? And how do you buy them when you don't have any money? And
right.
And then we went from, really very basic beginnings of flying in mountain climbers to telling the world that we were now going to fly people to the South Pole, which was really ludicrous because Antarctica really is the domain of 13 different nations that all compete for the continent. And here we are, this little tiny upstart with 4 partners working out of a 300 square foot office on Granville Island in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Wow.
And we're telling the world, no, we're going to fly you to the South Pole. And on top of that, it was going to be $35,000 US to just stand there for 4 hours. And so as you can imagine, we had articles written about us all over the world. People would send us articles. We couldn't even read the language. And so suddenly we were very popular. And so, the power of having a monopoly, which is still true today, to have a monopoly is unquestionably an amazing thing to have. So after going through that whole experience, I decided to go back to school. So I sold my share of the company and went back and did an MBA. And then that's what led into this current business.
Which is?
So currently, we are now one of the leading experts in helping people to become speakers in the world. And we run a 2-month online boot camp once a year. And this year we had speakers from 9 different countries enroll in that boot camp. We call it BOSS, Business of Speaking School. And we also, I say we have a small team of 7 people. And we also have built something called SOS. And so we actually do the daily promotion for bloggers in 3 different countries. So we take their blog and we put it on social media, and we do it all for a few bucks a day.
Yeah, I was looking into that program because it was something that I was thinking that just might make my life a whole lot easier.
Yes.
And it sounds terrific. Like, it sounds like a really affordable way of having somebody else do that work for you in a world where that stuff is getting more and more expensive.
It is true. And we were just thinking this week, because we were working on some of the marketing literature, and we were thinking, one of the alternatives that people look to once they've had a blog for a while and they are now trying to find more traffic for that blog, they start looking towards getting a virtual assistant or a relative or someone. And really what SOS does, and why I think it's having so much success, is it takes away that whole hassle. You don't have to go and try and recruit or hire someone. You don't have to deal with paying them. You don't have to communicate with them. And so what I was looking to create, Allison, was something that was kind of automatic, but had a real person involved. And so, we're really proud of the fact that we hire Canadian women who work for SOS from their homes, and they work with clients all across the United States and in Canada and Singapore even. And we've never outsourced it beyond our country. And so what we see as a future is we'll be able to hire people in North America who can earn a nice little part-time income by helping bloggers to get more traffic.
Right. And I'm looking at, if somebody wants to go to your website to look into this, they can go to hughculver.com, correct?
Yep. Or they can go directly to getsos.net.
Okay. And it shows your pricing there. Like, you're starting at like $100 a month.
Right.
Yeah. When I think, for me personally, how long it takes me to market something like that and how many hours I might spend in a month, that's hours I could be actually doing stuff that I'm good at. So it sounds like
that's right. Yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting thing, Allison, because I really created SOS for myself because I realized, boy, there's a lot of repetitive work in promoting my blog, like once I've written the blog and found the image and published the blog and then gone back and checked the spelling and then answered comments. The last thing I want to do is stay up at night putting posts on Facebook and saying the same thing over and over again on Twitter. And so right now, what's happened is we've had this phenomena of scheduling software that's come up. And so first we had Hootsuite, and then we had Buffer, and now there's lots of alternatives. And so people can they can subscribe to a scheduling software for a few dollars a month or $50 a month or whatever. But the reality is they still have to do all the work. And what we decided to do when we invented this was, why don't we get somebody to do the work for you and to schedule it for you and to double check it for you and to make sure the images get pulled properly. And so I'm calling it a DFY, so done for you service. And so SOS is a done for you service. Scheduling software is a DIY service, and that's that's our direct competition is people are looking for a solution, and I suppose either hiring a VA in some foreign country, virtual assistant, or paying for some scheduling software is our competition, and that's what we're up against. And it's kind of fun, we're trying to find our niche, and we're trying to find easier ways to explain it to people, because what we do is kind of a hybrid. And so it's fun, and we're having success building it.
Right. And so what's your ideal client for that? Somebody who's just starting, somebody who's been doing it for a while and just can't get it off the ground? What are you after?
Great question, because we go through this all the time. Who is our avatar? Who is our? We had it up on our whiteboard last week. Amy and Ron, and so our ideal client is a fairly mature blogger. And by that, what I mean is probably at least 1 year of blogs. They blog at least twice a month. Really important is that they know the value of the blog. So they are invested in making the blog work. And they have some social media followers. So they have to have a few hundred social media followers as a basic. So a few hundred on Twitter, a few hundred on Facebook, and a few hundred on LinkedIn is ideal. Because otherwise, when we put stuff there, there's no one to see it. So SOS is purely based on, we read the blog, we think about it, we think about your target market, and then we create posts that go out every day on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. So you have to have people there to follow, to read those social media updates. So that's our ideal client. And so that, we started with public speakers, because that's what I am. I'm a public speaker as well. And so I know that market well, and then we moved into manufacturers and retail stores. We're looking now at lawyers. So we're looking at, we've got authors. We have marketing companies, marketing agencies that use SOS. They actually find it easier than having their staff do it.
Right.
So,
but it's always a good idea to get somebody who's good at doing something to do that. If you have somebody who's answering phones and they're really, really great at that front desk first point of contact, doesn't necessarily mean they're good at social media and finding out places to put this stuff.
Yeah, really good point. And so one of the things that we can promise with SOS is it's absolutely guaranteed every single day. Like we have 2 people looking at every post that goes out, and you'll never miss a day. Whereas that's pretty hard to guarantee if you've got staff doing it off the side of their desk, or people that have vacation time or something like that. And so we call it foundational promotion. So it's basic. It happens every day. It's really, really good. It gets results. And then on top of that, we recommend that people announce events and book launches and specials, and they announce that on their own, but they don't have to worry about it. They can log into their Twitter, and right away they'll see 4 times a day we've been on there. And there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic service. Yeah.
That's very cool and super. Like, it seems really unique. Like, I've talked to a lot of people in social media, and I don't know of too many people who are actually doing that, and especially doing it at a price that's that. Or they're writing it for you, and then it doesn't sound like you. And like, there are some people who are obviously very good at that, but there is something nice about writing your own stuff.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And so again, I don't know if anybody's ever called it this before, but I call it done for you services. And I think there's an opportunity, maybe even for your listeners, to start thinking about, okay, what is it in this information age and this age where so many people are selling advice, that you can actually do it for the client? Because certainly what we have found is that clients love the fact that once they hand it over to us, it's off their list. They don't actually have to communicate with us. We have clients that haven't talked to us in 2 years because they don't need to. So because as long as the blog is there, we're doing our work. And so done for you services can show up certainly around someone's home, around their office, but it also could be virtual. So it could be where a person is doing marketing or writing or copywriting, where they're doing some kind of inventory, or they're doing some kind of audit of a person's business. Mm-hmm. And I think it's exciting. I think that it also helps the entrepreneur. If the client is an entrepreneur or a business owner or whoever, it helps them to avoid the procrastination that comes along with, big long lists of what they should be doing.
Right. And that burnout.
Totally. And the burnout. Yeah.
Because I'm just launching my book. My book launches September 1st. And I think about all of the number of hours that I put into promoting it, on top of having to write it and do all of that stuff as well. And it can be daunting. And I'm still running my other company. And it's so nice to have somebody come along and just say, hey, let me do this part for you.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
it's like Christmas.
Exactly. I mean, it has to be a business decision. There has to be it has to make sense financially. But I would suggest that if you can't outsource a part of your business, then there's something wrong with your business model. There's probably something wrong with how much you're charging or how much volume you're getting, and I have
your emotional relationship to it.
Exactly, very good. And I've discovered that usually I've known long before I've outsourced something that it was overdue. Like I've known because I'm bored or I'm frustrated or I'm spending my nights doing something that I shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. And the most obvious things in businesses are your bookkeeping and things like that. But there's a lot of other things. We actually came up with a model. I came up with a model, Alison, last year where I said there was 3 ways to outsource work. And the most obvious one is when we give someone a role. And that's when you hire a virtual assistant or staff in your office or something like that. So that's a role. And that's when you're in a relationship and you are you've got maybe standard operating procedures, you've got maybe an employment contract, and that's a role. But then there's a one-off task, and so of course people love going to Fiverr, and we use Fiverr for getting a 3D image done of our book covers for ebooks, and simple things that we know they can't really mess up, and so that's a one-off task. But you could also have a one-off task where someone helps you with a project or something. But then in the middle is a routine. And a routine is a whole other way of outsourcing. So in a way, SOS is a routine. We do the same thing for you every week, and it shows up as great results. But we don't do anything else. We don't analyze your marketing. We don't do special events. We don't go and find you followers for Twitter. So we do this one routine. And I think there's an opportunity there for entrepreneurs to be thinking, what is a routine that has value for me, but I don't want to do it anymore. And if I don't do it anymore, I can actually have either more fun or more capacity for new types of work or more creative time, or I can do something better than I have been doing. So, right? So SOS is a routine. Another routine would be something like before, like managing every time you have a contract. Another routine is posting your blog. So like 2 years ago, I wrote up all the steps to posting my blog, and lo and behold, Alison, it was like 20 steps. Like it's actually a lot of little tiny steps.
Yeah.
Right? So once I've written the thing, there's actually a lot of little tiny steps to actually get it to the point where it's on this. So I wrote it up and I gave it away to somebody. And so that routine now has been done every week ever since I gave it away. And I've never had to do it again. Mm-hmm. And so I know that as long as my blog post is ready by Wednesday, then Muriel on our team will actually get that routine done. And here's the thing that we do is we create the operating procedures in Google Docs, good old Google Docs, and now Muriel can edit it. Mm. So as Muriel figures out a better way of doing it, she goes ahead and changes the routine.
Right. So, and it's great that you have people that are empowered enough that they can make those choices and keep modifying and making it easier.
Right.
And staying current.
But anybody can do this. See what I think anyways, my little
well, you might be overestimating some people's talents.
Possible. But I do think from the entrepreneur's perspective, I think that they think in terms of roles and tasks. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got a role, or they think, I'm not big enough to hire someone yet. I don't have enough to keep them busy. What would I do in the slow months? Or they have a task. So they understand, but the routine, to me, is an exciting new opportunity. I just need to identify something in my business that happens every 2 months or once a month, or in my case, the blog is every week, and then give it away to somebody. And don't worry about the fact that you're not, filling their income. Don't worry about that. That's their independent contractors. Let them worry about that. You're saying, I've got a contract for you. If you want to do this one routine, I'll give it to you every single time.
Right. Yes. Well, it makes sense. Like from a business perspective, when it goes back to that whole thing, don't get good at the stuff you're not good at. Stay really good at the stuff you're really good at.
Yes. Very good.
And you can't stay really good at it if you're worried about all these minute details of stuff that drives you absolutely bonkers.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Very good. And so, like in the case of my blog, I actually enjoy writing the blog a lot more now.
Yeah, because you don't have that ugly stuff stuck to the end.
Done.
That gets done at 1:00 in the morning.
Yeah, like when that document goes into Dropbox, I'm done. I don't have to do anything. And then miraculously, an email goes out. We have this whole routine. So on Saturday it shows up on LinkedIn Pulse, and then on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. an email goes out, and the blog is actually up on Saturday at 6 p.m. and it's all timed, and it goes out at a certain time, and it happens religiously every single week, exactly the same, and I love that.
I can understand why that makes so much sense. And you have really great blogs.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to direct people to your website again, hughculver.com, so that they can see these. I read one, I think I read one about spelling words.
Oh, yes, incorrect words that make you look stupid.
Yes, I love that one. Because there's so many things on there that I kind of went, oh, damn. I hate it when people do that, or, oh, damn, have I done that?
Right. People love those. That's a really popular one that people, for some reason, they love sharing that blog post. Yeah.
Well, because I think, like for me personally, it's one of those things that I can really look at and learn from. And I can, at the one hand, I can say, oh, I'm doing that right. And the other hand, I'm like, oh, I got to fix that. Right. And I don't think there's an awful lot of things that are written in that manner that makes you feel really good and empowered to make change.
Oh, neat. Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, I really enjoy writing the blog, and it's really also fun to, because of our development with SOS, of course, it's made me really learn more about blogging and how to promote a blog. And once I started to understand how to monitor the results of my blog, it educated me more in terms of what to write next. So in other words, right? So once I started to learn how to pay attention to what people were reading, because before I just aimlessly wrote whatever came up on Saturday. Well, now I have to write this thing and have it ready by Wednesday, and I have to be thinking ahead. And so one of the
Did you just write about Google Analytics recently?
Yeah, I just did. Yeah, yesterday.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. That's this.
Yeah. It's Google Analytics for non-analytical people. So that's on the SOS blog. So we have a blog on SOS, and we have a blog on hughculver.com. And so what I recommend that everybody does is they create an editorial calendar. And do you want me to explain to you how that works, Allison?
Would that be helpful? Go hard.
Sure. Yeah. So if you think about a matrix or a spreadsheet, and at the very top in the middle, you have your main topic. So you're an expert in organization. You're an expert in spiritual awakening. You're an expert in healing yourself or leadership. And then below that, on the next row, you have, let's say, 6 subtopics. So these are micro topics that relate to the main topic. So, for example, I worked last year with a woman who counsels people on how to dress for success, and which is something I really need in my life. And so I was very interested in what she had to say. So at the top, it would say, dress for success. Then below that, it might say mistakes that people make. Then the next one might be, the next subtopic might be dressing for success as a career move, how to save money dressing for success, how to, maybe a DIY dress for success, and on and on it goes. So you have at least 6 categories that go across. And then down the left-hand side, you have themes. And so these themes are different styles of writing your your post, just like a journalist would have. So, for example, one is how to. Another theme might be statistics or facts. Another theme would be news or something topical like the Olympics or something that's coming up or has happened. Then another theme might be about controversial. So you're taking an opposite approach, or you're talking about why something doesn't work. So now you marry between, across the top you have subtopics and that relate to the main topic. Down the left-hand side you have themes, and now you fill in the matrix. So you say, okay, I want to have a how-to article about how to dress for success for career. So you say, okay, I'm going to take that one box and I'm going to brainstorm 5 different topics about that. Okay, well, let's have one topic all about shoes. Let's have one topic all about matching colors for seasons. I'm just making this up, obviously. Let's have one
doing
topic.
A good job.
Right? Thank you. One topic that's all about why should I bother, worrying about this, or one topic about how does it work, how to have the biggest impact with the least amount of effort or whatever. So now I've got one square filled in, and then I go, okay, let's look at money issues or mistakes that people make. So let's look at mistakes that people make, and down the left-hand side, let's pick seasonal, or something like that. So we'll say mistakes that people make getting ready for the Oscars, because maybe the Oscars are coming up, or mistakes. See what I'm saying? And so it's really fun, and then you end up with dozens and dozens of topics that now you can pick from and say, okay, this week I'm going to write about how someone can DIY dressing for success from a point of view of mistakes that people make, or from a point of view of how to save money. And so with that as a basis point, the next thing to do is to pay attention to what actually works. Mm-hmm. And there's really 3 ways to know what is working on your blog. So a really simple way is to look at number of comments. So that's pretty good. So that article you mentioned about incorrect words, that's actually got the most comments all year for any blog post. So that's a good clue. So that tells me that people really like that topic. The second way to know what really works is to go into Google Analytics, which, as you mentioned, I just wrote an article about that on getsos.net on that blog. And that is a good starter point. So you can learn a little bit about Google Analytics, and you can just look at a couple of really basic items there. And then the third way is to use a tool called BuzzSumo, BuzzSumo.com, BuzzSumo, and then just drop your URL or the name of your website in BuzzSumo, and it will show you your top 5 most shared articles.
Interesting. So
there's 3 ways that someone in just a couple of minutes can get a sense of, oh, that's what people really like. Mm-hmm. And from that, you now have your editorial calendar, what I'm going to write about, and now you have feedback. And from that, you can start to narrow in what are the topics that are going to work the best.
Well, and I love the idea of that matrix too, because then when you're sitting down to write, it's pretty clear. You don't have to come up with something. You already kind of know what you're doing, and then it's just a matter of writing it.
Sure. I mean, and of course it's still work, and but what I like about that style is that you're not going to be flailing around trying to make it up, right? And so
because the alternative is having a million things you can write about.
Totally. And that's when people will start saying, I don't know what you do. Like, I don't quite know. So if you go to hughculver.com and then type in editorial calendar, people will find that article and explains how to do it. And I think there's actually I think I put an image in there of what it looks like. So it's pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. Oh, I have a sample, fashion makeover sample. I actually show you what I created.
Oh, terrific.
There you go.
All right. Gotta like that. Well, it's good to have samples and tips and techniques, and you have a ton of them on here, which is super, super cool. Okay, I think I dropped the ball a little bit when we were talking about what you did, and you said you went back to school and you got your master's?
I did an MBA.
MBA. And then how did that translate from flying planes to speaking?
Yeah, right. Very good question. So I had just sold the Antarctic company, did the MBA, and lo and behold, while I was doing that, I was starting to get asked to lead workshops at university. So I started primarily in marketing, because people thought, wow, if you can build a multi-million-dollar business that fast, you must know something about marketing. And so, I started leading marketing seminars, and then that led to me doing a lot of self-employment training. So I became like the marketing guy. So I was doing week-long marketing workshops, and I did that for quite a few years. And then at that point, I started getting asked to speak to corporations, and that led into public speaking and large audiences. And I think my first audience had 1,000 people, and I didn't even know I had no idea what I was doing, but it was really exciting. So I loved it, and then that led me into my public speaking career. And I've done, typically every year I do about 35 keynote speaking engagements across Canada. And then 6 years ago, I thought, well, okay, now I should be giving back and helping other people figure this out, because public speaking is a remarkable opportunity for growing your brand, for earning money, and for building up an audience. And yet it's also kind of confusing. Like, how do you get started, and how do you find these engagements? And we see these people up on stage, and we either think, oh, they must be doing this for free, or they know a friend of a friend, or like, how does it work? And so 6 years ago, I started teaching other speakers how to do it. And, I started, Allison, really innocently. I said, well, I'm going to start by coaching people for 1 year and see if I can help build their business. And so I got on the phone every day for 2 weeks and phoned people and said, I want to coach you for a whole year. And at that time, it was going to be $6,500. Do you want to do it? And I thought, oh, this is just a crazy expensive. Like, that is so expensive. And so we ended up with 7 people. And then I worked with them all year long. And I learned all about what I didn't know. And I learned...
Which is the best part?
Oh my gosh. We did 4 retreats and monthly coaching calls. And it was really, really exciting. And they're still great friends of mine. And so that was the beginning. And then I dipped my toe into conferences and boot camps. And then that's all in the last 6 years. And then that's when I developed SOS and the BOSS program. And that's what I've settled on. So I have 3 parts to my business now. It's really simple. I'm a speaker and an author. Once a year, I do the BOSS program for speakers, and we run SOS for bloggers. And that's it.
So what are some of those tips that you can give people who are, breaking into the speaking industry and don't know where to start, and may not have this, what used to be a $6,500 program? I'm not sure what your new program costs, but what are some tips that you can tell them to sort of get started?
Well, so the first thing I think people need to understand is they're probably not good enough. So we usually
yes, I've heard some of those.
Yes, and so we usually think we're better than we really are, and that's because we've watched a lot of really bad speakers. And if you want to move into the paid speaking business, you need to, and I'm not trying to make myself sound smart or anything, but you need to earn it. And the way to earn it is be in front of a lot of audiences and take the feedback. So, for example, speaking at your local Rotary, Lions Club, Red Cross, women's shelters, charity, like I've done all those. I was also a certified facilitator, so I could also facilitate tons and tons of annual general meetings and strategic planning sessions. And so I was in front of hundreds and hundreds of audiences before I actually got paid to speak on stage. Now, I'm not suggesting people need to go through all that, but what I am suggesting is that every time you give a free speech, you should be getting better to get paid. So you should be getting closer to getting paid. So if you want to come into the market as, let's say, a $3,500 keynote speaker, great, but you need to be a $3,500 speaker. Like, you need to have learned the skills to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's not about standing up on stage and telling a great story about a mountain climb or telling a great story about a business that failed or succeeded or whatever. It's really a kind of an interesting combination of entertainment and education. Mm. And so, right? And so the only way I think you can actually learn that is, I mean, of course it helps to take my program. My program is primarily all about how to get hired and what to charge and building a real business. But we also teach you the way to get hired, of course. But it's really doing those free speeches live that teach you how to be better on stage.
Right. Yeah. And what do you think are some of like the biggest mistakes people make once they're on stage?
Sure. A classic one is starting too slow, finishing too fast. Mm-hmm. So they think they got to warm up the audience, which you do. They think they've got to throw in tons of stories at the beginning, which you do a little bit of, and then they always run out of time at the end. And the reason they're running out of time at the end is because they put too much value on the content. They think that it's super important that I get through all 7 points. I've been in some situations, Allison, where I had an hour scheduled. We were waiting for a minister or deputy minister or someone to show up. They were late. Then we had to wait while they did their talk, which went overtime. And I had 25 minutes left of my hour. And I just skip points. I don't even tell the audience I'm skipping. I just skip points. And nobody knows the difference. I've been in front of, I remember, I hate doing after dinner talks. I was getting ready to do a dinner talk. And while all the speakers were talking, I just kept reaching up and deleting slides. And I deleted half my slides. And when I got up, I think it was the best talk I ever gave because I had 6 slides. Because you have to appreciate the fact that you're getting hired for content, but what the audience wants is entertainment with content.
Right.
No one can listen to an economist for more than 5 minutes without, or no one can remember what economist says after 5 minutes unless they put in some entertainment to anchor the content. But if they tell a great story about gold prices or oil prices, or a great story about how, the economy is related to a giraffe or an elephant or whatever, now I can remember it. It's the entertainment that makes the education actually work. And so a big mistake is start too slow and too fast. Another big mistake is not getting the audience involved and doing all the work. So you get up there and you do all the work. And that's great. It's hard work, and certain speakers are amazing at that. People that really are more of an orator, more of a classic old style speaker. But I found that if you have real content that you want people to do something with, because for me, I've always been more of an educator than a speaker. And if I have real content, I want people to do something with, like, my speech is all about productivity, then I have to get them to do something to anchor it, because 30% of the audience are kinesthetic learners, and they have to do something for it to actually even make sense, but let alone, for them to remember it. And so another mistake is just talking and not actually getting them to do anything.
Right. So what's the best ways to engage your audience?
Okay, the simplest way is what I call the 90-second dyad. And it sounds like this. You simply say, and this is a trick with adult learners, I never tell them what's coming next. I simply tell them the next thing. And so I say, I want you to turn to the person next to you. I want you to decide who's got the longest hair. Okay, short hair. I want you to go first, and you're going to share what is the biggest problem that you have around ... go. And that's it. And I get 300 people all doing exactly what I want. And then I say, okay, come on back in. Okay, let's move on. I don't debrief it usually, not with a big audience, and I move back in. And so about every 12 to 15 minutes, I'm going to do something. And so the simplest thing is a 90-second dyad. And you might think, 90 seconds, like that's ridiculous. Like, how could people actually learn anything? But if you've only got 60 minutes, you can't afford to give them more than 90 seconds. And 90 seconds is actually quite a long time for two people who don't know each other very well to talk about something personal.
It is. It is. God, sometimes it's hard to know what to say after hi. And then that feels like an eternity.
Right. Now, that's a really good point, Alison. So the trick there is very specific instructions that I know everybody can follow. So, for example, if I say, turn to your partner and you have 90 seconds, I want you to talk about time management. They go, the what? Or if I said, I want you to talk about what you want what's your ultimate goal from work? What? Those are too hard. But if I say, look, I've just finished delivering a lesson about planning or goal setting or habits. And if I turn them and say, turn to your partner, you got 90 seconds and I want you to share with them, what is one habit you know you need to change? Mm-hmm. Well, everybody has a habit they want to change because especially if I just had them write it down on their handouts. Now I know they'll be successful. So I'm always trying to make them set up for success. I never want to make them feel uncomfortable or they don't understand the instructions or they feel dumb. I always want them to be successful. And then that way, the next time I give them the instructions, they actually want to do it.
Right. Yeah. Well, you start to look forward to that opportunity to engage.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's so simple. Like I'm convinced that if people simply did something about every 12 to 15 minutes in their talk that got the audience working, they would have more success. The audience your content will have more impact. You'll be more memorable and the audience will enjoy you more.
Mm-hmm. And they're probably not going to fall asleep.
Right.
Which is a really good sign.
Right. And here's a simple thing is, at the 2/3 mark, if I'm still doing a diet, I might say, okay, everybody please stand up. And then I give exactly the same instructions. Now, there was no reason to stand up except to wake them up, right? Mm-hmm. Or to make sure they were all alert. But I give exactly the same instructions and now they do it standing up. Or I might say, find someone within 3 feet of you who you haven't said hello to yet. Okay, go and join them. And so I was talking about this morning. We have a community that I host, and we meet every 2 weeks, and we're all speakers from around the world. And it's a membership program that I run. And I was saying that, in the first 5 minutes, you need to earn their respect because you are running the show. And so you need to be very clear with your instructions, but you need to also make sure that they feel safe with you. And so for example, don't enter the audience. Always stay on the stage. Like even Tony Robbins does not enter the audience until he's built rapport. He stays on the stage. Because if you freak people out or make them uncomfortable or build distrust at the very beginning, now you've lost them and you have to earn that back. So in the first 5 minutes, you want to build rapport, trust, respect, and then you can get them to follow your instructions.
Right. Yeah. And I'm thinking back about places that I've been and when I've lost trust for them. Mm-hmm. And it's so true. I don't gain them back. Sure. And, especially with some of those things like, so I was totally unprepared, so I'm winging this.
Right.
I just want to get up and walk out. Because they're never going to win me back from that statement.
Very good. Or they get up on stage and the first 5 minutes is all about their taxi ride or their hotel or their flight, which none of us can relate to because we don't spend our times in taxis, hotels, and flights. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And so, or the last audience they were with. And so none of those things are going to warm us up to them. Mm-hmm. And it's really ego that's driving that kind of behavior.
Right.
So,
and I think it's super easy for people to make those mistakes by trying to be human while you're up there. Like I remember seeing Ellen speak at an event, and I was super excited to see her because I think she's like uber cool. And it was set up like interview style. So somebody came out onto the stage. They had 2 chairs sitting down, talking to each other, and she didn't like the chair she was sitting in, and she complained about it for the whole half hour. Mm-hmm. And and even still, and that was a few years ago, even still, when I see her, that is still such a part of my memory of her.
Sure, of course.
And I imagine I will never be able to see her without, having that experience. I still think she's absolutely great, and she does a lot of really, really good things.
Right.
But it's so true once you lose that trust.
That's right. So, for example, let's suppose the person gets up on stage and tells an inappropriate joke, or uses, some kind of foul language or something. Now, on the surface, who cares? But it may, for people in the audience, completely put them off at that point. And now it doesn't really matter what you try to teach. You've lost a portion of your audience because you thought it was cool, or you thought that the audience was into that kind of stuff. So those are kind of classic, simple mistakes that speakers make. The hardest stuff to change, I would say, Allison, is the content. Is to make the content, relevant, obviously, but also to deliver the content in a way that really is going to make a difference. That's the hardest thing to do. That's what I always work on, is how can I get my 3 or 4 or 5 lessons to really make a difference? And I call it the one thing test. And the one thing test is when someone comes up to me after, I want to ask them, so what's the one thing that really made a difference? Or what's the one thing you're going to do? Or what's the one thing you really remember? And if they don't have something, or if what they come up with isn't what I wanted them to come up with, then I need to go back to work again. Because I'm talking 5 minutes after I've got off stage, if they don't have one thing, then I'm in trouble. Right? Because no, and don't get me wrong, there's magicians and jugglers and humorists and historians and that's not their job. Their job isn't to teach one thing. But I'm an educator, and so I'm being hired to help some team or staff or association or something, and so I need to always keep that as my goal. Is have I actually helped them to do something faster and better than they could on their own?
Yeah. And I got caught once having somebody ask me, what was your biggest takeaway? Because I got stuck in a bathroom lineup with the speaker. And later on in the afternoon, because they'd come out to watch the rest of the show, and she said to me, I said, I just heard you speak. And she goes, yeah. She goes, so what was your big takeaway? And I went, oh.
Right.
And I had nothing. Because it wasn't a memorable speech.
There you go. Yeah, that's tough. Well, tough in a bathroom lineup. Come on.
Yeah. So, I managed to muddle through it all, but that is a really, really powerful bit of information for somebody to glean.
Right. And of course, what we want is for the event planner to hear about this. And that's the real secret sauce is, can you be so effective that the event planner gets amazing feedback? Right. Because they're the decision makers, and this is where we get into the whole business side of speaking, Allison, is, of course, we're there for the delegates, but our business runs on event planners. The delegates don't make the decision. The event planner does. And so somewhere in the room is someone that holds a checkbook. And what we need is to make sure that they are super happy. And that's where we get into things like, okay, was the person a prima donna? Like Ellen with her chair. Did the person change their audiovisual requirements at the last minute? And I'm guilty of that sometimes, but I always ask permission, but sometimes they get it wrong. And when I arrive, I really need it done right. And so I can around a lot of things, but I may need to get that audio cord or something. Does the person, I was at an event last year and the person was they didn't know where he was, right? And they're literally doing the introductions and he's in the bathroom. So, the event planner has got a different checklist than the delegates. The event planner is thinking in terms of business needs. We are, for large events, Allison, the speaking portion, the paid speakers, is about 10% of the budget. Most large events, you're going to find that the hors d'oeuvres before dinner cost more than the speaker.
Right.
And so we need to keep ourselves in check and remember that at the end of the day, we're a part of their business. And
like any business, if it's not easy, why would somebody revisit it?
Very good. Exactly. Right. And so, it's not like we're going to become best friends or, I'm going to call them about their summer holidays, but I definitely want to be a partner with them for this event. And I want them to feel like, okay, he's the one guy that got everything to us on time or early. He's the one guy who said, oh, I'll do a promotional video for you. And he actually did it. He's the, that kind of little stuff, right? He's the one guy that when he showed up at his hotel at 11 o'clock, he left me a text message saying I've arrived. Right. So I didn't have to worry anymore or whatever. And, I mess this up all the time, but that's one of my goals is to make sure that I'm the one that was a really good partner with the event planner.
Yeah. I've done event planning in the past. I've done up to intimate events, up to 8,000 to 10,000 people events. And yeah, the easy stuff should be easy. And if somebody's coming to speak, that should be their business and that should be easy. And so that when there is mistakes, they're real legitimate problems that arise, not some sort of ego-based fluff.
Really, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And I think for the most part, that's how speakers operate. They understand the business and these are partners. And, but if you're listening to this recording and you're asking yourself, okay, how do I become a speaker? Well, just keep that distinction in mind is that there's the delegates and there's the event planner. And just to be clear, like an event planner, certainly they could be a professional company and that's what you'll see. Like perhaps that's what your role was, Allison, for large events, but also the event planner could be someone in the HR department that is doing this off the side of their desk. It could be someone who is working in a 3-person association office and every year they got to put on that darn annual event and they got to go and find 12 speakers and they got a budget of about $10 and, and it's brutal and they're going to ask for favors and they don't understand this stuff because they only have to do it once a year. And so, and then you have people even nowadays, private people that are putting on events and they're entrepreneurs and they are marketing companies or podcasters or whoever, and they put on an event and then they're inviting you in because they're not because they're going to pay you, but because they're going to give you an audience. And then you can sell something in the back of the room or whatever. So we have all these different types of event planners. And I would say that, for the most part, they all have more or less the same needs. And
yes, to keep it easy.
Keep it easy. Keep your promises, keep your promises because you don't want to become someone that they're chasing down. And, just think of it in terms of business. It's a business. So for these people, they love you, they're happy, but it's a business.
And it's good common sense too. Like it makes perfect sense, regardless of any business that you're in, to make your interactions with other people that you're in business with or rely on through your business, to make those interactions positive and friendly and as collaborative as possible.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think most people are great about this. So for people trying to get into the speaking business, again, every free speech is one step closer to getting paid, and you can never do too many free speeches. It really is how you learn. And then I would suggest then the next thing is you need to, as soon as you can, learn how the business works. That's why I created Boss, because what I wanted to do was to share the back, what happens behind the scenes. Like, how does it work with an agency or an event planner or a bureau? How do you get hired? What are different ways to negotiate your fees? And so as soon as you can, try to learn how the business works, because nobody has written a book that I think definitively explains it. And you'll hear all sorts of different versions. And yet it is a somewhat predictable business. And so learn that as quick as possible. So, that's how
Well, and it's probably one of those industries that change a lot. Like it has, so once somebody does write a book, 6 months down the road, things are being done a bit differently.
Somewhat.
Some of the things that were maybe true a year ago, and if you think a book takes, 9 months to 18 months to actually get to print, depending on if you're going through a publishing company or not, it can take a long time to go from ideas to writing to published to promoted, and some of those things may be less relevant.
Yep, that's very true. Yep, that's very possible. I think for the most part, a lot of it doesn't change. I think the marketing of it changes. That's what's changed.
Okay. But Boss 17 starts up in March.
That's right. Yes, there you go.
So who needs the book when they can just check out your program? How do people find out about it?
So they should go to businessofspeakingschool.com, and then they can get on the waiting list. So businessofspeakingschool.com, and we have a waiting list there, and they can get signed up, and they'll be the first to hear about it. So it was very exciting. Last year we had 4 amazing superstar guest presenters on the program. It's a hybrid program, so it's built around my lessons every week, but also every year I create a video library for them. So this year was 24 videos that walked them through the entire business, and short videos like 15 to 20 minutes. And then every week we talk. And in addition, this year I brought in 6 guest speakers. So we had Michael Port, so New York Times bestselling author, and we had one of my favorite event planners who hires over 200 speakers a year. She came on board. And we had Grant Baldwin, who's a rock star now with Speaker Lab, and Jamie Tardy, who is a huge podcaster with Eventual Millionaire. So all these people I invite in because they're my friends and because I want to provide different perspectives on certain aspects of the business. And so, so we had 90 speakers from 9 different countries join us this year for 8 weeks.
That's crazy.
It was really good.
What a range of experience and conversation that must have gone on with that.
It was exciting. And, we're getting emails every week from people telling us about the bookings that they're getting. And and that's certainly one of our goals, but it's not the only goal. But it's really exciting to hear people saying, I just got my first speaking engagement, or I've got, I had one this morning, which was, I just got booked. He's already done 3 since Boss, 2 free, 1 paid. And that's great. So that's someone who has he's an author and a coach, but he's never been a speaker. And so it's exciting to see that. And it's also exciting just to hear people say, wow, this is going to save me years because I didn't know this. I didn't know how the business worked. And I had all sorts of, misconceptions. But, and then for a lot of people, what they tell us is, I feel like I've got this community now. I've got 90 people that understand me. So people are doing book launches on Boss. We had one of the fellows just this week. He's circulating his new video and he's getting feedback from the members. So they also get 90 people who continue to share with them, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think what's neat too is that even though all these people are looking for speaking gigs, they're not necessarily in competition with each other because people bring such an individual perspective when they get up on stage.
Well, and they're from all over the world. So we had people from Australia and Dubai and England and Singapore. And so there's so many topics. There's so many different topics that they talk on, right? So, yeah.
Right. Super cool. Well, we're almost out of time here. That hour went by really quickly. You had so much information to share, and I really appreciate that because as listeners, it's always nice to glean information where we can about different things that are going on. So I'd like to remind people that they can find you at Hugh Culver, HUGHCULVER.com, and totally recommend going to this website. There is so much information on there. Even if you do nothing but read through these blogs and get all these tips and everything else that exists in there, you've done yourself a huge favor. So any last comments, Hugh, for our listeners?
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that recommendation, Alison. I really appreciate that. I think that, when you listen to radio shows like this, I think it's really, it may be tempting to think that there's a reason why I'm doing stuff maybe that you're not doing, or there's a reason why, I guess if there's any thought I'd like to leave you with is that I could have done everything I'm doing now a lot faster if I'd simply taken the time to learn from people already doing it. Mm-hmm. And, maybe it was my ego or my ignorance got in the way, but there's people out there that know they know how to do this, and they're good teachers and they like to teach. And some of the best help that I've received in my businesses has just come because I asked. So, just send an email or whatever, go on Twitter and connect with a person, but ask people for help, and you might be very surprised at how generous they will be to help someone who's in a place where they used to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great. It's and that's certainly good advice. You need help, ask.
Right.
Recognize you need it and then ask somebody for help. So thank you so much. It's been a real treat having you on the show.
My pleasure, Allison. Thanks for the invitation. I really, really enjoyed this.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear. So until next Thursday, speak up because you have something to say and I want to hear it.
Thanks for hanging out with Natural Born Speakers. But don't stop now. Contact Allison with questions to be a guest or hire her as a speaker. Go to dominothinking.com. See you same place and time next week.